It's a big world out there. Welcome to Bigfoot's Wilderness Podcast.
Well, good evening and welcome to Bigfoot's Wilderness Podcast, episode number 4. I hope that you're all doing well out there, wherever you are. I know we're all trying to adapt to this new lifestyle. Hang in there. I feel like from everything I'm reading and watching, we're about to turn the corner. A few weeks ago, I uploaded some scenery along the James River here in Virginia. And on occasion, whenever I can get out, I'll try and upload some more scenery. I received a lot of nice comments, and some even said the rushing water was a welcome, soothing sound. So be on the lookout for some more scenery videos in the coming weeks. I do hope that you're enjoying these podcasts. When I came up with the idea of starting them, I wanted to try and give you something more than just encounter stories and talk with some interesting people. I certainly do have some interesting guests lined up that I think you'll enjoy. Let's start with a man named Mike, who had a sighting in Mount Holly, Vermont. A week before we'd seen this thing, I had heard something running and crashing through the woods on the side of Route 103 as I was on my bike. I'd never seen what it was, but could hear its hard breathing as I crossed over the bridge and stopped. Man, was I scared, or thought I was, until this. I was in Mount Holly alongside Route 103, just below Bursaw's old dance hall, which was converted into apartments where we lived at the time. There is an old section of Route 103 that goes along the river for about 3/4 of a mile. Actually, it's called Bowling Green on a map, just south of East Wallingford. If you head south on Route 103, you will see an old section of Route 103 that follows the river that is now just a drive to a bunch of homes that are now there. It was in the summer, around 6 to 7 p.m., before sunset. My mom, John, James, and I decided to go for a bike ride down this old road, as we did so often. So this time, my brother challenged us, that we could pedal to the bottom of our yard, and from there, we had to coast all the way down to the old train depot by the pond on the north end of the property. I was in last position when we were almost to the opening of the pond, when my mother slammed on her brakes, and my brothers followed suit. I lifted my head above the handlebars to see it, standing there in the road. It had something in its arms. We came to within 20 feet of it. I remember staring at how massive and thick it was. Just then, its left leg muscles started to tighten up like a sprinter. It quickly bolted down the river embankment from the middle of the road where we all were, and across the river and up through the open hardwoods and into the thick pine area in the blink of an eye. It would take any normal person at least a good 5 minutes to cross that same path of the river. We pedaled back home as fast as we could and told our dad, only to think we were joshing him until Mom also told him. I think the reason it stepped out in front of us is because its peripheral vision may have been impaired or maybe even lacking, because we were coasting silently, so no noise. I don't think it had a clue we were coming in the first place. It had to be at least 8 to 9 feet tall, and was thick-bodied from the shoulders all the way to the feet. Its legs were very round, every bit as much as the torso, and it occurred to me that it may have had a baby breastfeeding in its arms, just like I'd seen my cousin do with her baby. The river was about 3 feet deep where it crossed, and as it crossed, it looked like it was crossing a puddle. That's how massive it was. I remember picking blackberries in that same area where this thing was standing just a few days prior. So if the berries are attractive to us, they surely must be about the same to them. Thank you, Mike, for that story. And actually, Mike has another 1 or even 2 other encounters that he shared with me that I'll share on future podcasts. Thanks again, Mike. And on to our guest for the evening, another guy named Mike, or Michael in this case. I swear this is just a coincidence. Michael has a fairly new Instagram page called The Drawings of Bigfoot. His images are amazing, and I'm going to share a few of them with you on this podcast tonight. If you'd like to see more of Michael's drawings on Instagram and Facebook, you can follow him at The Drawings of Bigfoot, all one word. I'll leave some more information on Michael in the show notes. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Michael.
So let me ask you, how are you doing? You faring okay? Your family doing all right?
Yeah, everybody's doing well. We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate. I mean, we're, financially, just like all of us, I think is going to be a bit of a hardship, but I'm very fortunate to be locked up with the people that I love the most, my wife and kid. I get to be creative and, I still get to draw and do all my fun stuff. So it hasn't been too bad.
That's good. Yes, same here. I have a boy and a girl, and they're older. Good. They're in their teens, and they're very good at finding their own private space.
That's probably good and bad because they can find their own private space, but they're probably cooped up, and you're going to get a lot of complaints. I have a 4-year-old.
Oh wow! Okay.
I know. A little 4-year-old. They're trying to keep entertained, but it's been fun. A lot of lightsaber battles in the backyard, and things of that sort.
Oh yeah, you're having a good time. It's a little bonding time.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about our favorite subject. Let's talk about Bigfoot. And one of my first questions to you is your page, your Instagram page, and obviously you're an excellent artist, and I really enjoy looking through your pictures on Instagram. I'm sure you're going to add a lot more, but I know a lot of people that would like to possibly want to contact you, and a lot of them are my friends on my different social media outlets. How do people get a hold of you on social media?
That's the best way to do it is through my Instagram page, The Drawings of Bigfoot, all one word, The Drawings of Bigfoot. And shoot me a message. And I also have a Gmail that I set up, thedrawingsoфbigfoot@gmail.com. And I love hearing from people. So, by all means.
Perfect. I definitely will share those in the show notes so everybody can, access your information.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on, by the way. Sorry. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem at all. We're still in I call it the infancy mode. You'll be episode number 4. So
nice.
We're very young, but
yeah, same here. Yeah, I haven't been doing this for very long, that long either. So
I think it's an amazing. I love to see people with talent. My daughter can draw. It's amazing. I can't draw. I don't know where I went wrong, but I can't draw.
Yeah, where did she pick it up from?
I don't know. I guess my wife and then her family, they're very artistic and they can, they're crafty. And I guess I brought nothing to the equation. So.
Nice.
Yeah. So tell me this, can you tell us a little bit about your sketches and how you came to do them?
Yes. So sorry, I was getting a quick drink of tea here. So I've been into this subject since I was a kid, I was a kid in the 80s, a teen in the 90s. So this was pre-internet, this is pre-YouTube, all that stuff where all this information wasn't just instantly accessible at the drop of a dime. I feel in this day and age, you could get caught up with so much research that took people at one point in time so much longer to obtain because they just had to find it where they could in books here and there. There was not as many TV shows or specials or anything like there is now. Certainly not the internet, certainly not YouTube. So it was always, Leonard Nimoy's In Search of, the great mystery stuff, all these different cryptid books that we used to get in elementary. I think that's when I first got wind of the Patterson Gimlin still at that time. I saw a still of the footage before I saw the footage itself. And of course, I mean, once you have an image like that to go off of, just like a whole bunch of us, that, sent my mind into a frenzy of like, what if And that had always been something that just had fascinated me my whole life. And whenever there was books, I would get them, I would read them, and whenever I'd see specials on TV, I would check them out. Well, it wasn't until probably within the first 2 years of YouTube, people started dropping all of these old episodes of all these in search ofs and all these things that we grew up watching. Suddenly they're on YouTube and we could binge watch all these things. This is before the term binge watching existed. And, watching all this stuff. And sooner or later, I started stumbling across a lot of other things. You start stumbling across lectures, you start stumbling across researchers and, the stuff that they talk about. And I think the things that the three things that truly sent me into a downward spiral into this whole thing of like, okay, there's so much more to this. One is there is a lecture by a man by the name he passed away by the name of Lloyd Pye. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lloyd Pye.
I don't think I am.
He was a scientist. He wrote a book, and there's a lecture on YouTube called Everything You Know Is Wrong. And it is lengthy. It is like 3+ hours, but it is a 3+ hour explanation, a hypothesis, a theory, I should say, of how these things could be, these creatures could very much exist in this day and age. I mean, and the breakdown of it was just incredible. He gives this whole panda bear analogy in talking about when people used to look for the panda bear way back when. Before that, they were known as a known species. They were the Bigfoot of their time. And it took a long time. It took 30 years, and then I think they finally found like a pelt or something like that. They found, the skin of one, and they said, oh, then they must be extinct. And then another 30 years later, so 60 years, mind you, they still didn't find one. Then they finally found one, and it just turned out that they inhabited areas that people just couldn't get to. Now, panda bears are known to be not that bright. They're not very intelligent. They have a very singular food source. They're not omnivores. They have to eat they have a very specific diet. They're black and white in a forest jungly atmosphere. They don't camouflage. They're not intelligent. And for 60 years, during a time where your average 10-year-old would be able to camp out and survive out in the wilderness for a week because of just your general knowledge of the outdoorsness. Even then, we weren't able to get to where these panda bears were able to inhabit. Now, when you're talking about these creatures that seem to be incredibly intelligent, incredibly stealthy, they could eat anything and they could travel anywhere. I mean, good luck. Anyways, Everything You Know Is Wrong by Lloyd Pye. That whole thing is incredible. The other thing is David Paulides, of course, Missing 411. That was very intriguing because it was something, it was all these witness testimonies and about strange disappearances in our national parks. Whenever I mention 411, I do like to mention that there's a series of books, Missing 411, that do not have anything to do with Bigfoot at all. These are not Bigfoot books. They're not about Bigfoots. They are simply these police reports that an investigator by the name of David Paulides collected, all of which had signed affidavits, and they're just very strange reports of strange disappearances that are just, you cannot answer. If suicide or kidnapping or anything, foul play, seemed to be part of it, then it was automatically written off. And so it's not a series of books saying that it's a one singular thing causing these disappearances. There's no way it's one thing causing all these disappearances. There's no way. But within these series of books, there's these little stories sprinkled in about these hairy giant hairy ape men and these giant bear men and this and things that are very bizarre. And that sent my mind into a frenzy. And then the third one that really, that really tipped the scale was Sasquatch Chronicles. Was when I first heard that there was a Sasquatch podcast, and I started listening to that when, I mean, they were still 5-6 episodes in when I first started listening to that. So it was very new, and and since then I've been listening to that and the slew that have come, since then, and yeah, and so that's how I really got interested in this whole thing. But as far as drawing, as I would listen to all of these episodes on the podcasts, sometimes a lot of the times these people have these descriptions, these facial descriptions that are so detailed, even the body in general, but like their face. And the thing that's great about the podcast is they give people an opportunity to tell their stories, their encounters, long form with the dignity they deserve. And that's always been awesome. When I would hear about all these faces and all these encounters, and you hear the obvious trauma in their voices, it does a number to you mentally as a listener. And sometimes I have a very vivid imagination, and when they're explaining these things, and they're explaining these eyes, the noses, the mouth, and the cheekbones, and you name it, the hair texture, the skin texture, the eyes, sometimes I would have to just start drawing these things just to get them out of my head. And I would listen to these episodes over and over, and I would just listen to every little detail of what they were saying, and I would draw it. And I just started doing that over and over, and you start seeing similarities in certain types of things, and you start seeing like, wow, these things are very diverse. They look so different from each other. You realize that right away. So I was doing that for quite some time. I've been drawing Bigfoot for somewhere close to 10 years, for myself, really. And sometime this past year, sometime early last year, I said, screw it. And I said, I listened to all these people talk about their encounters, and I've been drawing all these pictures, and, these are people who probably can't get these creatures out of their heads. And man, I would love to be able to ask them questions just to learn and just really pick their brain and step into these podcast stories and be able to, poke around. I said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And I started reaching out to certain people and started to get into some witness sketch work. And that was life-changing.
We definitely have to share some of your pictures. Like I said to you, I'll absolutely share on my Instagram page and Facebook and just kind of get some of your pictures out there. But maybe what I can also do is, share some on YouTube community, and just so people can see you and see what you've got. And I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't do social media, and maybe we'll figure out some other outlets for them to be able to see your work. But I really like your style. It doesn't have to be a painting. It doesn't have to be on canvas. I mean, you'll take out a piece of loose leaf paper and draw it. And I really, really like that. And there's great detail, which is amazing. I mean, you've got an incredible freehand.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really impressed. The one thing that we talked about when you and I were talking, and you talked about the witness sketching, have you ever seen a Bigfoot?
I have not. I've not seen one for myself, which is, again, is the huge appeal of reaching out to these people I've been listening to for years and years and years. I wanted to be able to ask my own questions. You listen to people on these podcasts, and I mean, it's it sends your mind into a frenzy. And so no, to answer your question, no, I have not experienced any for myself. All of my Bigfoot experiences have been through speaking with witnesses. and experiencing just, it through their stories and their testimony. And it's a game changer when you're listening to somebody on a podcast versus you're sitting next to somebody for hours on end, and having this person trying to explain to you something. They're not making something up. There's a huge difference in somebody when somebody's making something up and when somebody is genuinely trying to explain, trying to get something out. And it's mesmerizing. So yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying no, I have not seen one for myself. But I often wonder if I have seen one, if I did ever see one, if I do ever see one, what that would do to my ability to kind of help others get across what they saw, because I'm wondering if that would always be the point of reference of which I always start from as the creature that I saw, because that's what's going to be ingrained in my psyche. There's something really nice and liberating about not having that. It's just stepping aside. There's a huge difference between the sketches that I do just free form and the witness sketch work. It's completely different. When I'm sit down and I just kind of do a freehand, just free form sketch off the top of my head, I start wherever it is I start. I always start in different places of the face, of the body. And when I'm drawing, if I start with the eyes, I just I'm automatically going through a mental Rolodex of all these eyes that A, I've drawn, B, I've heard about, C, have been told about. They're a little more human. They're not very human. They're black, like the Raver kid contact lenses. The 11-year-old kid said that. They're black, like Ravers, like the Raver eyes. Or to say, no, they're very human, or they're just very little. I mean, you name it. They're big and round. They were very squinty. They were very far apart and almond shaped. So if I'm drawing just free form, I'm going through my mental Rolodex. I get to the eyes. Okay, let's do these kind of eyes. Get to the nose. Oh, let's do these kind of nose. Oh, what kind of cheekbones should we do? Should we do more of this and this? Should we do no ears, or should we do some ears? Should we do a cone head? Should we do a smaller head? Should we do a slope head? Do we do, I mean, you're being creative. I get to be creative and draw Bigfoot based off of, what I've heard from witness testimony. Now.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say now with witness sketch work, when you sit down with a witness, it's the creative aspect takes a back seat completely. I'm trying to not be creative. My creative senses have to be out the door. It's 100% led by the person who is giving the witness sketch. There's a very elaborate, detailed process, and it's very important. I find it, for me, very important to try to keep that creativity or the my sense of imagination away, because I'm just implementing my style, or I'm just implementing what I want it to be, not what this person saw. So it's a lot of just really thorough communication and yeah, just taking that back seat and yeah, it's very fascinating. That whole thing is just very fascinating. But yeah, it's very different from just sketching.
I've had quite a handful of reports since I've been doing this, and I can tell you that it seems to me like a lot of people focus on the nose, the eyes, the head. Those are the top three, I feel like, and of course the body, the size.
Yeah.
But I think that you're providing something. I was kind of going in the same direction as you when you were talking about the witness sketching. I think that you're providing a therapy, and you're also being open-minded, and you're drawing to the best of your ability what they want to see.
Yeah.
You're creating their image.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to do.
And by the looks of your Instagram page, you're definitely there's some spooky looking ones Some
Yeah.
some look ape, some look man, some look in between. And that's my question to you, which is the question that always gets asked by Wes. What do you think they are? And so many people just can't commit to man, ape, something else. They just can't do it. So I know like you said, you've been doing this for 10 years. What do you think they are from what you've been able to sketch?
It's interesting. I feel like with Bigfoot in general, there are these stages. When you first get into the whole subject, you're getting into it and you're poking around through the place of, this is what reality is. This is black. This is white. And now we discover that there's this thing, and I want to categorize it as either black or white, and that's it. There's no woo, and then you have the other people that it's all about the woo and all this kind of stuff. But there's something about this thing. The more you poke around in it, there's something about this whole deal that makes me feel like a cat trying to understand the internet. I could see that there's a little mouse, the little thing on the screen going around, and I could bat at it. And I keep looking behind the screen to see if I can see it, and I just can't see it. And I'm hoping one day I'm going to look behind that screen and see it, but it's just not there. And I keep telling all the cats, this damn little mouse thing is moving around on the screen. I'm trying to bat it on the other side of the screen, and it's just not there. But there's some other thing going on that's at play. It's a cat trying to understand the internet. I'm a human being, and I barely could understand how the internet works, let alone a cat. So as far as what these things are, I don't know. I have no idea. Once again, that Lloyd Pye lecture gives a very good theory, but yeah, I don't know. What I do know is us. I feel like we're the weird ones. We're more strange than these Sasquatch creatures. They seem way more in tune with this world than we are. I mean, look what happens right now. We're in this corona scare. Everybody ran out to get toilet paper. Nobody knows what to do. We're not connected to the earth. We remove ourselves from the earth. We don't adapt. I mean, these creatures adapt because this is their place. We don't adapt. We spread. We put conduit and concrete and all this stuff. That's why we're rushing out, freaking out, getting all this toilet paper. What are we going to wipe our butts with? What other thing on this planet has that concern? What are we going to wipe our butt with? Nothing. We're the weird ones. We're very strange. Our place in this whole thing is so bizarre. So whatever they are, whatever these creatures are, they seem very natural here. They seem like they belong here. I don't know in what way. I have no idea. Because like I said, I'm a cat trying to understand how the internet works. And I don't even know how the internet works as a human. It's probably horrible. It's a horrible answer, but that's all I have.
Well, that's a hard one to explain. I mean, it's a flow chart for sure. But let me ask you this. So you've done live face-to-face witness sketches. Does anybody ever share a story with you?
Oh yeah. I mean, every single one so far. Every single one so far has.
Is there any particular one that you'd like to, or that you can mention, or you don't have to give anybody's name or area?
Yeah, one I could mention that I would like to talk about. I won't get too into it. There's a woman named that is pretty well known within the Bigfoot community. Her name is Claudia Ackley. She made headlines a couple of years back when all of these news reports came out and all these clickbait articles. Woman suing the state of California over the existence of Bigfoot. She's that woman. The woman suing the state of California over the existence of Bigfoot. She was hiking with her two daughters in Southern California, San Bernardino Mountains near Lake Arrowhead, and they came across a a group of three, a family of three of these creatures, her and her two younger daughters, and it, really did a number to her little ones. Anyway, she tried to make a report to the Department of Fish and Game. They were taking her seriously at first. They placed some calls to, some powers that be. Then all of a sudden it was, you saw a bear, you saw a bear, you saw a bear. And she would say, no, 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 this wasn't a bear. She said this thing, and her daughter got a very grainy, it was like a Snapchat video of it. And you could clearly see that there's something there. And she tried telling the Fish and Game person that it wasn't a bear. It was more of an orangutan orange, and the video looked brown, but it was more of an orangutan red. And the Fish and Game person actually said to her, well, there was a zoo here years ago, and I think an orangutan escaped. So you could have very well have seen an orangutan, which I would have thought like, well, yeah, that's probably exactly what I saw. What the hell are we going to do about this orangutan? But nothing like that. They were just passing it off. No, it was either a bear or an orangutan. You're good. I'm sorry. And so she got really upset because what is she supposed to tell her children? She found out that there was more people in her area, including a sheriff who had connections to stuff like this as well, too. There was a sheriff that she met, and when she was talking to him about it, he was a little taken back and said, there's an older woman that lives at the base of that trail, and she keeps calling our guys down because she says that there's monkeys looking in her window. And she's like, what? She goes, yeah, she said there's monkeys looking at her window, and they're getting upset because they think she's crazy. And Claudia's like, no, I don't think she's crazy. And so Claudia puts this sign out on that little trail that says, if anybody has experienced anything weird on this trail, please give me a call at this number. There will be no judgment. She didn't mention anything about Bigfoot monsters, nothing like that. Just said anything weird. Started getting calls from people, an older married couple. Her daughter was in town for college. Something big and black was chasing her down that thing, and now she left and she never wants to come back. Now she gets another call from a guy that says, I walk up and down that trail as much as I can with a loaded weapon to make sure people are all right, but I can't tell you why. So at that point, her daughters, of course, are having nightmares, and they're traumatized by this whole deal. They won't go outside in the day or nighttime. And so she said, I've got to do something. And she was listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. And I believe it was the episode where you had Todd Standing on, who was talking about his intentions to sue Canada over the recognition of Bigfoot in some sort of way. So she's like, hey, if he's doing something like that, maybe I can do something like this. Now the only thing is, she's actually not trying to sue the state of California to recognize the existence of Bigfoot. That's just a much better news tagline. She's actually suing the Department of Fish and Game for not doing a proper investigation when she reported something. Because even though, what if it wasn't a Bigfoot and what if it was something else, they still should have given her the dignity of doing an investigation, taking a report, something. It was nothing. And she's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell my kids. What if I was walking back down that trail and there was a father with his, young kid walking in the direction they were? What am I supposed to tell them? There's a Bigfoot over there. Don't go over there. They would think I'm nuts, So that's who Claudia Ackley is. She's if you just YouTube Claudia Ackley interview, she has done a lot of rounds telling her story. She's told this story to death. It's I've heard it several times, and each time she tells it, it's a good two hours long. But I've heard it. I had heard it so much. I kind of knew it almost as if I knew a song. You know how you hear certain encounter stories so much and so often you kind of understand the bullet points of them almost. It was almost like that. So I'd reached out to Claudia, and I flew out to where she lived, and she took me out to the trail. She showed me where the whole place was, and it was pretty incredible because I'm walking on the trail of this place, and I've seen they have breakdowns, even video breakdowns of the area that people have done and all this. So I went in kind of having a really good idea of the atmosphere of her story and all that stuff. So, which I won't get into because it's been covered to death. You guys could listen to her interview, that side of the story. But one side of that story that I would like to talk about that was really intriguing to me was, so she picks me up from the airport, Claudia, and on the way back to her place, she has to pick up her daughter from school. Somebody was supposed to pick up her daughter from school. And she said, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to stop by, pick up my kid, if you don't mind. Blah, blah. I said, cool. And we're driving, we're talking, and she's telling me, about the Bigfoot stuff, this, and there's this, Bigfoot. And I had told her because I heard on the podcast that her daughter were traumatized by this and that they don't like this. They're not fascinated by it. They don't listen to any interviews. They don't listen to podcasts. It's just, this scares them. It's not for them. They don't like it. And they get really annoyed when researchers and people like myself come to town and poke around with, in the woods. And because they all want to talk to her, and they had never talked. They didn't talk to anybody. She just, yeah. So anyways, I knew this by listening to the podcast. So I said to Claudia, I said, listen, I know your daughter, her stance on this whole deal. So I don't want you to feel like we have to talk Bigfoot when she's in the car the whole time. It's totally fine. Like, I'm here, I'm going to be here for, a few days, and, we'll hang out. We don't have to stress out the kid, it's all good. And she said, well, usually, yeah, that's the conversation I would be having with you. She said, however, my daughter really likes to draw and she really likes to edit. I'm also an amateur filmmaker. And, so she was telling her daughter about, who I was, and she was very intrigued. She said, so she might actually like to hear your take on things, whatever. So one thing I noticed is, picked our daughter from school as we were driving, as we were getting into the mountains and like into the thicker mountains, the thicker woods, and we'd hit a stop sign. And Claudia would talk a little bit, and she's talking this. And the daughter, her daughter, Jenna, who's 11 at the time, she's in the back seat on her phone, typical, tween, just on her phone, beep, 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 beep. And she looks up and she just starts going, mom. And Claudia goes, oh, yeah, sorry. And then we keep moving. And I was like, oh, Claudia will probably just sit here forever and talk if you don't stop her from talking, I guess. Hit another stop sign. I mean, we're barely parked there. Mom. Oh, sorry. Claudia starts driving again. Turns out that this kid will borderline have an anxiety attack if you just stay still at a stop sign for too long, because you're a sitting duck in the middle of the woods. You're like a person on a little raft in shark-infested waters. She can't stand being at a stop sign in the woods in the broad daylight. So we get home, we get there, even during the day, if she had to throw out the trash, it was like, all right, do you want me to watch you? This is broad daylight. The trash is right outside, As soon as night comes, she's in her room. I mean, this kid is like, and she wanted nothing to do with any of this. And throughout my trip there and all that kind of stuff, Claudia told me that there was one researcher that tried talking to her, and that person was a little pushy and just wasn't very personable. And she was just like, you know what? Screw this. No. Didn't want to do anything. And so nobody had really gotten a solid take on anything, even the looks, because she just didn't like talking about it. Well, while I was there, I was having dinner one evening, and Claudia comes downstairs really quick, and she said she wants to talk to you. I said, who? She said, Jenna, she wants to talk to you, her daughter. I was like, oh, okay. And she said, come on downstairs. I was like, oh, right now. Okay. So her daughter comes downstairs, and her daughter's there with her little cell phone, beep, 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 just kind of like shy, it's like her little security blanket. And she said, I don't remember this thing the way my mom does. My mom seems to really remember all this stuff. She goes, I don't really remember it the way she does. I'm like, it's cool, you know. It's like, listen, first off, I'm not being paid to be here. I flew down here on my own dime. You know, I'm taking time off of work, and I'm not doing this because I don't believe you. So trust me, you know, like, I want to listen. I want to hear anything you have to say. I'd appreciate it, you know, like, I feel bad. And, you know, we just kind of started talking, and she got into her story. Man, she remembered 10 times more than Claudia did. As soon as she started getting into it, she started, you know, doing all these things. And the thing that really, now this is the thing that was a huge eye opener. So, like I said, I know Claudia's story. And at that time, I knew Claudia's story like I knew a song. I knew the bullet points. Even when I was there and I was walking the trail with her, I'm like, is this where blah, 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 blah? She's like, yep, blah, blah, blah. Like, this where blah, 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 blah. Yep. I kind of had a gist of the whole, you know, and especially her whole emotional arc of what she was feeling where. So I'm thinking, let's see how these stories sync up. So keep in mind, yes, I'm going down there, but you know, I don't know Claudia. I didn't know Claudia at that time. I didn't know them. You know, they very well could be not telling the truth to me. I don't know. That's part of the appeal of doing this. I want to see for myself. I want to ask questions. So with Jenna, when she started telling the story, one of my thoughts was, well, let's see how well these sync up. Let's see, you know, this and this. And something really incredible happened. Suddenly, I'm listening to that exact same song, only played with completely different instruments and in a minor key. She had her own unique perspective. And when you put the two stories together, the timelines, everything syncs up perfectly. But their whole emotional arcs, everything was completely different. Their set of fears. The mother saw what had happened was Claudia was walking with her two daughters. The daughters were walking in front of her. She sees her two daughters stop and look from the left to the right like something was crossing the trail. So Claudia thought, uh-oh, it's a bear. Her second daughter catches up to the first one. She stops and does that same thing. Claudia's like, yep, it's a bear. So Claudia runs in front of them. And as soon as she runs in front of them, she looks, and in front of her, 30 feet up on a tree, is this massive male Sasquatch. And so when you talk to Claudia, when she describes this creature, the creature of her encounter, I mean, it's like this giant thing that was in this tree. And I mean, I've heard this thing described in many podcasts. I've heard this thing described with her when I was there. And now here I am talking to her daughter, right? Now, the thing is, when the daughter was walking in front of the mom and they stopped, it's because there was two other creatures. There was a mother and a juvenile. That's what she's thinking. She's assuming it was like a mother and a juvenile. They were smaller. And they walked right in front of her down the hill and behind a tree. And when she looked up the tree they were behind, that's when the daughter saw the big one, the adult male. So the kid had two of them walk right. I mean, they were probably like 10 feet in front of her, walk right in front of her and down. And so when you talk to her, and that was another appeal is, hey, we have two people that saw the same Bigfoot, the same Sasquatch, same creature. So that's let's draw both their, you know, get both their accounts and compare, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, the kid was, you know, she remembered the big one in the tree and all that, but the creature of her encounter was this one that was 10 feet in front of her and just stared her right in the eyes. She kept saying, when it looked at me, just the way it looked at me. And every time she would say the way it looked at me, she would make like a gesture with her face. Like she would just kind of push her face a little forward and open her eyes. And you can see she was kind of like making the same position, making the same gestures that this thing was making. So every time she would say, when it looked at me, she would just make that pose, that gesture. So I could see the pose right there. That's why I really like people to explain their stories before I draw, because there's these little things like that without them even thinking about it. Like if I were to tell her hit the pose that this creature hit, there'd be something a little false about it, something a little stiff, because she's trying to replicate something. But this was more subconscious, and it was something she kept doing over and over when it looked at me, And then when I told her later on, asked her to physically do it, she did a stiff version of that. And that I'm able to implement those gestures, that posture, those little tells I'm able to implement, within the witness sketch a little bit. Those are all little clues. Anyway, that was really fascinating, that whole thing, her perspective. One truly fascinating thing about it was a huge lesson. The mother, when we were talking about the adult male in the tree, Claudia, she insisted. She said it looked like an adult. It looked like a Neanderthal man, not ape-like. It was like a Neanderthal man. And the daughter, when I talked to the daughter, she was like, "There's nothing human about this. It looked like an ape. It looked like a giant ape." I go, "So not like a Neanderthal? Nope, like an ape." And when you talk to Claudia, Neanderthal. So I was like, well, okay, And another thing was when I was doing a witness sketch with Claudia. Oh, well, I should start off with the daughter. The daughter, when I was talking to the daughter about the alpha male, there was a very, she was explaining its hair. There was it had a very distinct hair style, for lack of a better term. Well, the hair on top of it, she said it looked, she didn't see it do this, but she said it looked almost as if it would push its hair up, like if it was a weird grooming thing, like its hair was, everything on its head, its hair was pushed up. And it wasn't like it grew up. It looked like it was like pushed, like it's something that it would do. And she said almost like a treasure troll, kind of like a treasure troll. And so, and I pulled out my iPad and my little sketch program, and I was, doing a quick little sketch. I go like this, and she was like, yeah, and you could tell she just wanted to grab the pencil out of my hand, and I just gave it to her. I go, here, show me. And she was like, no, up. And she's like, really went and showed me behind the ears, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's such a great tool to have somebody just, sit there and dissect it like this. Anyways, up. And she said, like a treasure troll, I was like, okay. So just straight up like a treasure troll, almost like a point, and it was, when you see it, it almost looked like a shorter treasure troll hair from the drawing. So when I was talking with Claudia, now Claudia wasn't there when I was talking to her about this whole deal. So when I was talking to Claudia about it, and I was doing the sketch for Claudia, and we we're getting into the hair, I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. Let's see, because the hair is very distinct. And so the Claudia said, so let's talk about the hair. And she said it was just kind of messy and everywhere. I go, okay. So I go, could you elaborate more? Like what type of messy? And I don't want to unknowingly lead the person. I don't want to say, was it going in a specific direction? Nothing like that. No clues, no nothing. Just, could you elaborate more? Should just out, like everywhere is out, just like an afro, but it wasn't an afro hair. It was, thin hair, but just like poofed out. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm drawing it, and it was drastically different than what, Jenna was saying. I was like, whoa, okay, well, these inconsistencies. So I'm drawing, and all these different things. And the funny thing was the hair, and this is just a couple examples. There was a whole bunch of examples of stuff like this that happened. As we were drawing, and we go in and we refine it, because it's a process. There's a whole process, and we're refining it. And she looks at it, and then we, so a lot of times we'll take a break for a while, and we're, just hanging out, talking, whatever. And when we go back, I just kind of hold it up and say, just when you look at it, just what are the things that stand out as false? What are the things that stand out as like, yes, just, pop it up. And so, we were sitting there refining it. And as she was refining it, she's like, it's like, well, the hair probably was a little bit fuller on the top here. I go, okay, so I'm making it a little fuller on the top. She goes, yeah. And there was a little bit more hair like on the forehead area, kind of going up right here. I'm like, okay. And I'm drawing. She goes, yeah. And then this part here was a little bit more up right here. I'm like, okay. She goes, when somebody has hat head and somebody's wearing a hat for a long time and it's like your hair's pushed in on the side? I go, yeah. She goes, that's what it looked like. And she stopped. She goes, Don King. It had hair almost like Don King. And I was just like, wow. Here you go. The mother saying it had hair like Don King. And you had this little girl saying it had hair like a Teletubby. Not Teletubby, Treasure Troll. And so suddenly, now, mind you, if it was just somebody asking for their just verbal description, that would be inconsistent. There'd be an inconsistency there. But once you give them the ability to really dissect and give them the tools of like, let's put this on paper, suddenly though that inconsistency becomes incredibly consistent with what they were talking about. After, I think the day that I was leaving, we were sitting around and I had the computer screen on and we were looking at all these different recreations of artistic recreations, renderings of Neanderthal men. Some are sculptures and all that stuff. And Claudia was looking through them. She goes, oh, see, this guy, it was kind of like this. It didn't look like him. But more very Neanderthal like this, like kind of this kind of look like a Neanderthal. And then her daughter was on the other side, of the room over there on her behind her little cell phone, beep, 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 beep. And she looks up and she says, you think that looks like a Neanderthal? And then Claudia goes, Jen, this is a Neanderthal. And she goes, no, it's not. And she goes, yes, it is. These are recreations of Neanderthal men. And then the daughter goes, oh, whatever. That looks like an ape to me. And then she brought the computer closer. She goes, look at this. You're telling me that looks like an ape? She goes, yeah. You think that looks like a human? And she goes, yeah, that's a Neanderthal man. She goes, that looks like an ape, Mom. And even those two right there did not realize that this inconsistency became consistent once they had a point of reference to work from. And so, it was just such a masterclass on perception. And suddenly I'm thinking about, the Bigfoot community and how you have all these people arguing with each other over, that's not what it looks like. That's not what it does. That's not how it sounds. That's not what it smells like. That's not what color it is. That's not, all of that's nuts. And it's funny. I often explain it by saying it's like it's almost as if a good analogy would be, imagine an alien coming to Earth and seeing an Earthling, right? And he sees Pauly Shore, and he's like, whoa! And he goes back to whatever planet he's from, and he's in front of a whole council of these little alien people, and he's like, I have seen an Earthling. They're real. Let me tell you, they have this long, wiry hair, and they're very white, very skinny, and they have these bell-bottom pants, and the way they talk, they go, buddy, the weasel, buddy. I mean, the way they talk is incredible. And then suddenly there's another alien in the council, and they go, hold on a second, wait a minute, I've seen a person, I've seen a human being. Only this alien has seen Precious. Gabby Sidibe, is that her name? The actress that played Precious? And he's like, hold on. This alien guy is full of it. That's not what these guys look like at all. And so he starts describing what he sees. And now this guy that saw Pauly Shore is like, this guy's full of hullabaloo. Other aliens like, this guy's full of hullabaloo. Meanwhile, everybody else are going, these two aliens are crazy. Let's just leave them be. Let's just put them in their little corner and blah, 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 blah. But it's just, I feel like there's a lot that same type of thing within that Bigfoot community, just because of how diverse in looks these things are, and everybody has these experiences and with their own unique individual. Some see Pauly Shore, some see Precious, some see you knows it, blah, 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 blah. Some see Patty, some see a skinny, more athletic looking thing. And, but then you have all these people that are arguing their points.
Yeah, I've had to open up my mind too, because what it comes down to is perception is reality. So their perception is their reality.
Exactly.
So you can't get mad at somebody if he says he sees something different than you saw. Although it's great that you can bring them together and say, this is a Neanderthal, this is an ape. You think this looks like a Neanderthal, you think this looks like an ape. And then once you kind of bring it together and you realize they're both seeing the same thing, which is pretty incredible. I mean, that's something that almost probably never happens, because if you go on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you go, I mean, you watch a TV show, people have opinions. People say, that's not what I saw. I saw this. Well, you know what? If you got those two together, you may have actually seen something similar. But then again, it's just what's perceived,
Right. And what really stuck with me out of that experience is, like I said, without being able to, and there were a lot of different versions of that within this whole experience. There was so much that went on with here that was just like, oh wow. That if anybody were to question just on the surface, it just seems inconsistent. And now here are these people who are left out to dry, who really did have this, this thing happen to them, who really are suffering from trauma, who really are, their lives are truly affected by this. This little girl's friends aren't allowed to stay at her house because her mom is the Bigfoot woman. It's humiliating. Like, Claudia gets bashed. She gets bashed by the Bigfoot community. She gets bashed by, the community, all because she wants to fight because, her daughters, what is she supposed to tell her kids? And when their only hope of anything is just their ability to explain and to tell the story, I mean, good luck, because you're battling the perception of each other's that were there during the encounter, not to mention the perception of reality of the person that you're talking to, trying to explain, and I feel horrible, because a lot of people are just left out to dry and to be left like fools. And you hear about people developing drinking problems, a lot of substance abuse. They lose their families, they lose their friends, And sometimes it can be it could be just one little thing like that, just that miscommunication, that misperception, to go, all right, we got one over here saying that I was on board until, I found out one saw Pauly Shore and one saying that they saw Precious. So
yeah, that's a good point.
I don't have to journey down this I don't have to lend any more credibility or serious thought to this anymore, because there's the inconsistency, and this is already out there, and it doesn't take much for me to shut down. And it breaks my heart to know, like, just in that instance, I'm like, man, imagine all the variations of this out there, of people who have seen these things, and just being left to look like fools and feel like fools. I feel horrible for them.
Can I ask you, is the avatar that I'm looking at, is that Claudia Ackley's sketch?
It is not.
Okay, because it had the spiked hair and the hair kind of spiked all around, kind of like a troll, but shorter.
It was inspired. I do take some inspirations from a lot of witness sketch work, and I kind of throw things here and there. And one thing that I believe, I don't have that sketch in front of me right now, but I believe the hairline is very similar. Before me and Claudia were messaging each other back and forth here about a week ago, and since this whole shutdown thing and everything's happened, I've been trying to get a hold of her and I haven't been able to. I wanted to see if it was going to be all right with her. I was going to see if I could share those two sketches with you for the podcast, but I have not heard back from her. But if I do, And if she gives that okay, I'll definitely send that your way.
That'd be great. The encounter that I had, I guess if you want more information, I'll be glad to give it to you. But
Yeah.
that is that doesn't look similar to what I saw. But I guess everybody has to understand. At least I've probably listened to 1,000 different encounters and probably read 100. There are different types. They don't look alike.
That's what it seems to be the case, right?
Yep, it sure does. Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, and I tell you, I get stories from all over. I got a guy who is supposed to send me one, sent his encounter, and it was in a very urban area, which I guess, if you understand what the meaning of urban means, that it's a highly populated area, and yet this thing like crossed right in front of him in a park in a very populated area. I can't say until he lets me.
Okay. All right.
Can't say until
gotcha.
he says the okay. And he says he's going to send it, and I believe he will. I feel bad if I start to build up hype and then you don't actually get it. But it's
no. I hear you.
That's shocking to me that these things can be that close.
Well, yeah. Speaking of just that, I live in Tucson, Arizona. And we are, about an hour and a half away from Phoenix, and we're it's a college town. People who are born and raised here hate to call this place a college town, but essentially that's what it is. We're a smaller college town with a lot of culture, though, and a lot of desert surrounding us. And also we have a good little chunk of, I believe the Mogollon Rim connects to our desert as well too, down into Mexico and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I'm a tattoo artist in Tucson, Arizona, and I was tattooing a client of mine who had tattooed quite a bit, a woman. I was tattooing her, and we were talking about documentaries and talking about stuff, and she talked about how she loved paranormal documentaries and cryptid stuff, and she was very into that. And I was like, well, a little side gig that I like to do, a little side thing I do is, and I told her about the witness sketch work I've done and all this. And her husband, who was there, I mean, it turns out he had a sighting. He had an encounter when he was younger on the outskirts of the Tucson area, of the Marana area, out in the desert there. And he was floored because he had talked about it a little bit. He had only brought it up a few times when he was drinking, and his mother was there. The person I was tattooing was there with her mother-in-law and her husband. And the son kept turning to the mother-in-law because he was not aware of any Bigfoot community or any this or any that. I don't even think that it registered to him up until that point that it could have been a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It was just this very large looking very old, naked, hairy Native American man that had just really big black eyes and with like brownish hair all over his body. So it was him and a friend, and they saw it. It was in the mid-90s. They were younger, and he started telling me the story, and he had talked about how a lot of similar, you hear a lot of things that you hear in other accounts, the way that it would breathe. It sounded like it had respiratory issues, like it was like wheezing, like the way it would breathe. You could hear it breathing like a fat man that just jogged a mile. He talked about how he saw it jump over a barbed wire fence, and it was very clumsy on the landing. He said when it jumped over, it hurtled it like an Olympic, the hurdlers, they were there, the track, like a track, right. What is it called? Yeah.
Track and field. Yep.
Track and field, and you hear these kind of things quite a bit. And he's like, you've heard that before? You've heard that before? And his mom was sitting next to him, just her mouth open, just like, what is happening? And he turns to his mom, and he's like, I told you I wasn't crazy. I told you I wasn't crazy. Like, this guy was elated. He's like, oh my God. It was just, you could just tell was such a weight. And his wife was like, just that both the wife and the mom, you could tell like there was this sense of like they felt bad because they probably ridiculed him, you know. And so he gave me the coordinates to where this happened. I drove out there and checked it out. Yeah, in the middle of the desert, there's the barbed wired fence. The thing was, he was him and a friend. They saw this thing, you know, it was in the middle of the night, and it came right up on them on this barbed wired fence. They turned around, they had a flashlight. They shined the flashlight on its chest, shined the light up because they heard it breathing. They could feel it. They said they could feel the warmth of its breath.
Oh my
Turn
gosh.
around, up, and it was right there looking at them. And they took off running. They were running, running, running. And then they said that they could hear it running right behind them. So it went over that barbed wired fence like nothing. And they were screaming, help, 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 help. And, you know, they turned and it was just gone. And they were just freaked out. And turns out about a few days later, there's a group of kids. I mean, a big group of kids that are playing. The neighborhood kids, they're playing out there. They're running around. And then one of the kids just stops and just starts screaming, get over here. Everybody get over here right now. Just get over here right now. And you just hear screaming. And they look, and they said that they were pointing, and they see it running like a person, and it was running away from them. And they saw this barbed wire fence, and that's when they say they saw it hurtle over the barbed wire fence, and it was very clumsy on the landing. And, you know, it took off, and that it freaked everybody out. And even one of the kids' older brothers had a story about how he saw something that looked just like this thing on the side of the road when he's driving out in the middle of the desert one night. That traumatized him. So I was like, holy cow. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is just, you know, a very, you know, populated area in terms of Bigfoot encounters. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's occasionally there'll be javelina in my front yard, like on my street, like, you know, like the desert boars.
Yeah.
So there are animals. We are in the desert, no doubt about it. But that next morning, that stuck with me so bad. I was like, man, I can't believe that just happened at work. Just because I was like, you know what I happened to do? Then all of a sudden, and I was like, you know what? I got on my phone. I started looking up encounters in the area, and I saw on Reddit this gentleman posted about seeing something looking in his garage window at him on the outskirts of Tucson when he was a kid. And I was like, no way. So I signed up on Reddit just so I could message this dude. And I was like, you know, I just met someone yesterday who said that this happened, blah, 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 blah. And he answered back, and he told me when it happened. And it was right in the exact same time frame as when the person, you know, that my client's husband's happened, right? Dead smack in the mid 90s, around this out, like the pathway would have connected. And I was like, wow. I said, yeah, I could definitely put you guys in touch. But this guy, you know, and that's another thing with a lot of witnesses is, you know, especially ones like, for instance, this gentleman now works as a scientist for, you know, for one of the universities around here. And he's a scientist. And he says, this is the only thing in my whole life that has thrown a monkey wrench in my whole thought process of how I understand things. As a scientist, as my job, it makes no sense. But this is what I saw. I remember it clear as day. And I even said, let's get together. I'll draw it for you. You know, and just silence, never answered back. You know, it's a bit much, you know, sometimes it's just a bit much for people.
I completely agree. I you know, I've told my story on my channel, and I've mentioned it here and there, and it completely I thought somebody was hoaxing me.
You know, not to cut you off, but I was gonna try and find your encounter story, and where would I find your encounter story on your feed?
So it's under Bigfoot's Wilderness. It's the episode called The Bigfoot Incident.
The Bigfoot Incident. Okay.
Incident. Yep. And it's actually, I think I have it as a pinned video, so it's probably more prominent. You can actually see it. But we got to kind of wrap it up here. But I want to ask you one more question, then I'm going to have to let you go. But So you've seen, probably since you've been doing this for a while, you're almost like a researcher, because you actually go out to to areas of interest. But I got to ask you, so what's your opinion of Patty? You know who I'm
Huh,
talking about.
of course.
Doesn't have
Right. I would have, if I said no, I would have lost every amount of credibility I gained during this whole thing. Um, you know, Pat, Patty is an interesting thing. That subject is become its own subject aside from Bigfoot in itself. There's people who live and breathe by this in a way to where it's like, if this isn't real, it means Bigfoot isn't real. There's something like, it's just so attached to it. But I find it fascinating. I don't know. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if it's fake. I don't know. It is very, very fascinating. There's a new 4K resolution one that came out sometime around last year, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with a researcher by the name of Ed Brown. I was actually with Ed Brown at the time when I saw this.
Yep.
Yeah,
I do know who he is. Yep.
he's an awesome dude. And I remember that came out, and I looked at that, and when you look at that thing, I know a lot of people like to point out all these different things, like you can kind of see a little toe, you kind of see this, you can say, there's one thing that I saw that I was like, whoa. In that one famous frame where she turns and she looks at you, on the 4K version, if you slow that down, because the butt on Patty has always just had a weird look to it, hasn't it? It's had like this diaper
Yes.
butt thing. And I
Mhm.
know that's always been a point of argument for people who argue against it. Like, it looks like a diaper. It looks like this. It doesn't even, has no movement to it, has no this. Like, well, on this 4K version, if you look now, as an artist, I've been trained in, aesthetics and all that, and all that. You can see as soon as she steps down, you can see all the way a muscle shoot all the way up her thigh to her hip. And you can see this clear hip bone, this clear hip muscle. And suddenly you can see that whole musculature to that leg and how it would connect to the buttocks right there. And so in that one little moment, as an artist and somebody who studies, aesthetics and proportions, right there, I was like, whoa, now that's interesting. I know for me, and now again, I try not to just jump into anything and saying, 100%, yes, I believe this. Yes, I believe that. I try to be as neutral as possible. And the Patty footage, I mean, it's just one of those things that has been dissected and discussed so much and debated. But I find it absolutely fascinating. I would love to meet Bob Gimlin. That seems to be a huge argument on its behalf as well too. Because there's all this story about Roger Patterson and the way who he was as a person ethically, and the kind of stuff he did, and you hear con man thrown around and all that, and suddenly you're like, huh. But then there's this guy, Bob Gidlin. That's the chink in that armor, and that logic's armor. Because why the hell would they give him a gun? Why would they give this guy a loaded gun if they were going to put a guy in a monkey suit in front of him? That makes no sense. Bob Gimlin had the gun, and he had, and this man was offered $2 million to quote unquote come out with the truth. He's infamously known as this very stand-up, loyal dude who I've never met. This is just all based off of just his reputation. He has an incredible reputation, and he's beloved. And that man, I can't tell you how many times I think about if I had the DeLorean and I was able to travel back in time, that might be the one thing I'd want to see. I'd want to travel back and just and watch that moment.
Yep. Another test for you. What was the date in 1967? What was the date?
No. What was the date? It was
October.
Oh man, I'm not gonna get it. I am not gonna get it.
October 20th,
Okay.
1967.
I was gonna say October 21st. That
Oh,
would have been wrong.
you're still a great artist, though. No, I'm just kidding. Well, Michael, sorry, I'm gonna wrap it up, but I would love to have you back again. I mean, I really, I feel like I've learned more about being open-minded and being, well, I should say, being a little more neutral but at the same time being a little more open-minded, because, like you said, perception is reality. People potentially see the same thing, just different types of definitions. You got to keep open-minded and expect that, that not every Bigfoot's going to look alike.
Yeah. And yeah, I would love to come back. Right now I'm just kind of pushing out, the Instagram page, the drawings of Bigfoot, and but I have some projects in the pipeline that are along these lines that I'm really excited about. That I'm going to be that this whole Corona thing is pushed into high gear. So yeah, it'd be awesome to come back to talk to you, and also, it'd be awesome to help you get the drawing of the creature you saw in your encounter, so we get you a drawing of that as well too. So if you're interested, we can make that happen.
Sure. Well, I'm going to let you go, but hold on. So we will talk to you soon, Mike. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.